Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Now this story was submitted by a viewer who lives in these apartments in Maplewood, Minnesota. Maybe a few of you already might know which apartments I'm talking about, but the viewer would like to stay anonymous. They are sharing theirs and their wife's experiences living in this apartment. Now obviously, this isn't a normal apartment, otherwise it wouldn't be featured on this channel. The writer has compiled a list of experiences that they have had while living at these apartments. Now, if you would also like to see your story featured on this channel, please remember to send them to the email listed in the description below. And before we get started, remember to leave a like and subscribe. And without further ado, enjoy the show. This happened in Maplewood, Minnesota. And I still live in these apartments as of now. I will just say that it's one of those older apartment buildings in Maplewood that doesn't look scary from the outside. If you drive past it during the day, you wouldn't think much about it. It is just a normal brick building with outside parking, a front entrance with a small glass lobby, and long hallways that smell like old carpet, wet shoes, and whatever people are cooking that day. The apartment was a one-bedroom. The living room had a sliding glass door that went out to a small balcony, and the kitchen was right by the entrance. Our bedroom was down a short hallway, and the bathroom was right across from the bedroom. The first time we toured it, my wife said that the apartment felt heavy. Not scary, but heavy. I asked her what she meant by that, and she said that she didn't know. She said that the air inside just felt old. I kind of laughed and told her that all of these old apartments in Maplewood, Minnesota all feel like that. The carpet was old, the cabinets were old, and the walls looked like they were painted over a few times already. She didn't argue with me, and she just looked around. We moved in during the evening because that was when my cousin was free to help us with his truck. It was already getting dark by the time we had brought in the bigger things. There was one older lady who came out of her apartment and watched us for a while. She didn't say hi, she just kind of stood there with her door cracked open. At first, I thought that maybe she was just being nosy. In apartments, I think there's always usually one person that watches everything. My wife noticed her too, and after we went back inside, she asked why that lady was staring at us. I told her that she was just probably wondering who was moving in. The first few weeks were pretty normal. It was nice moving into a new place and setting everything up. During this time, we slept on our mattress on the floor because the bed frame did not arrive yet. Then I had my first experience. I had gotten home pretty late from work and was asleep in bed. Then at around 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because I thought I heard someone knock on our bedroom door. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft knocks. I opened my eyes and looked toward the hallway. I could see a little line of darkness under it, and I waited, thinking that I thought I was dreaming, but nothing happened. My wife was still sleeping next to me. I told myself that it was probably one of the neighbors next door. Maybe someone closed a cabinet or someone knocked on a different door and the sound traveled through the wall. I closed my eyes again. Then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. This time I knew that I was awake. I got up and opened the bedroom door slowly, ready to check the front door. The hallway inside our apartment was dark. The living room was darker. The only light came from the parking lot outside the balcony door. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. I listened for footsteps in the hallway outside, and nothing. So I went back to bed and told myself that it was an old building and that the walls were thin. The next morning, I didn't even mention it to my wife. I didn't want her thinking that the apartment was weird when we had just moved in. We already signed the lease and we paid the deposit. I didn't want to hear her complain about it and want us to move out all of a sudden. Another experience I remembered was with my wife. The first thing that she noticed was the bedroom closet. The closet had those sliding mirror doors. I never liked those because at night it made it feel like the room was another room inside of a room. But, one morning my wife asked me why I had opened the closet door before work. I told her that I didn't and that I left it closed. She pointed at it. One side of the mirror door was slide open about a foot. It was open enough to see our clothes hanging inside. I told her that maybe she forgot, and she said no, because she was the last one to use the closet and she remembered closing it. I told her that the door was probably loose and slid on its own. That made sense to us at the time. But then it would keep happening. We would close the closet before sleeping, and in the morning, one side would be open. Sometimes it was only a few inches. Sometimes it was halfway open, and sometimes both of the doors were pushed to one side like somebody had been standing there looking through our clothes. I tried to fix it. I cleaned the track, I checked the wheels, I even put our laundry basket up against it, and for 2 nights it stayed closed. Then, the next morning, the closet door was wide open again. I still didn't want to say anything scary, especially to my wife, so we just kind of kept quiet about it. Now, I also kept on getting sleep paralysis and getting sat on at night. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I think it was a few months after we had moved in. I remember one night I was sleeping on my left side, facing the wall. I remember waking up because I felt like someone was standing behind me, not touching me, but just standing there. At first, I thought it was my wife standing next to our bed. Maybe she had gotten up to use the bathroom and came back, but then I heard her breathing. She was still in bed with me. The room was dark, but not completely dark because we had a little nightlight in the hallway. Then the bed dipped behind me. It was the kind of dip you feel when someone sits on the edge of the mattress. I felt the blanket pull tight across my legs. I tried to move, but I couldn't. I tried to call my wife's name, but my mouth wouldn't open. I told myself that I was getting sat on. At that moment, I tried and struggled to break free. Now, this wasn't the first time I encountered sleep paralysis. I've also had sleep paralysis in the past when I was a teenager, but this one felt a little different. As I was struggling to break free, I felt something lean over me. I couldn't see it because I was facing the wall, but the back of my neck started getting goosebumps. Then the hair on my arms stood up. Then I heard what sounded like gibberish whisper right by my ear. It sounded like words, but words that I did not know. I tried to pray in my head, but I couldn't remember anything clear. All I could ask was for it to stop. Then my wife moved in her sleep and she bumped right into me. As soon as she touched me, the pressure lifted. I sat up so fast that I almost hit my head on the wall. My wife woke up and asked what was wrong. I was breathing hard and sweating. I told her that I had a bad dream, but she looked worried. I would continue to get sleep paralysis on and off here and there throughout the weeks. It didn't happen every night. Maybe it happened 2 or 3 times a month, but it was enough to notice. On another occasion, one night, my wife and I were watching TV in the living room. It was around 11 p.m. We both had work the next day, but we were awake, eating snacks and just watching Korean drama. Out of nowhere, we heard a cabinet door open in the kitchen. It made that old wooden creaking sound. I paused our TV. My wife looked at me. I got up and walked to the kitchen. and the cabinet above the sink was open. I told myself that maybe it popped open because the hinges were old. I closed it and went back to the couch. About 10 to 15 minutes later, it opened again, and this time we both really heard it. I got up again and pushed it closed harder. I went back down and sat down. About a couple of hours later, nothing happened, and we were just continuing watching our Korean drama. We were watching Crash Landing on You on Netflix when we heard something fall from the kitchen. It sounded like it had fallen inside one of the cabinets. I immediately thought of the cabinet that had opened earlier, so I went to the kitchen, to the sink, and I opened the cabinet above it. When I opened it, nothing was broken. Nothing even looked like it moved. The cups inside were stacked like normal, and our bowls were in the same place. I looked around thinking that some sort of mouse or maybe an insect had gotten in there, but there was really nothing inside. I closed the cabinet and told my wife that maybe it was the pipes, since it was right above the kitchen sink. Now, that was one experience with the kitchen. Now, this next experience, I don't remember when it happened, but it was around 2 in the morning when my wife woke me up. She was sitting up in bed, staring at our bedroom door. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me to be quiet and to listen. At first, I didn't hear anything. Then I heard it. Somebody was walking in our living room. The footsteps were slow, not heavy, but clear. It sounded like bare feet on carpet. There would be a step, and then a pause, and then another step, and then a pause. It went from the balcony door toward the kitchen, then from the kitchen back toward the hallway. I thought that maybe it was the upstairs neighbor or the neighbor next door, but the sound was a little too close. It wasn't above us, it wasn't right next to us, but it was definitely in our apartment. The footsteps stopped right outside our bedroom door. The door was closed that night. I stared at the bottom crack. I expected to see a shadow beneath the hallway light, but I didn't see anything. That was what made it kind of scarier. We could both hear something out there, but there was no shadow. Then the doorknob made a tiny clicking sound. It wasn't like it turned all the way, just a small click, like someone lightly touched it. My wife got closer to me in bed. I stared at the door, and then I eventually got up slowly. I quietly made my way toward the door and listened. I didn't hear anything behind the door, so I opened the door really fast. The hallway was empty. I made my way to all the light switches and turned them on. The living room was empty, the kitchen was empty, but the weird thing was that cabinet above the sink, it was open again. I closed it and turned off all the lights and made my way back to bed. On another occasion, it was late, maybe around midnight. My wife was already asleep and I was still awake scrolling on my phone. It was the weekend, so I just wanted to relax. We had our bedroom door open with the nightlight on outside. From where I was lying, I could see a little bit of the hallway and the corner near the bathroom door. I was scrolling through Facebook Reels when I saw some movement at the corner of my eye. At first, I thought my eyes were just adjusting to the phone light. Then I lowered my phone and looked. There was a dark shape standing near the bathroom. It wasn't clear. It was like a person-shaped shadow, but darker than the hallway itself. It was tall enough that the top almost touched the door frame, and it didn't move. It just stood there. I blinked a few times. I even turned my phone screen toward it, but the light really did not hit it. It was like the darkness just stayed dark. My heart started pounding. I wanted to wake up my wife, but I couldn't speak at first. I just stared. Then it leaned a little, like it was looking into our bedroom. That's when I finally shouted out my wife's name. I said, "Babe," and as soon as I said that, the shape pulled back behind the wall. It did not walk away, it just moved out of sight. My wife woke up and asked what happened. I told her I thought I saw someone in the hallway. She turned on the lamp right away, and we checked the apartment together. Nothing was there. The front door was locked, the balcony door was locked. My wife asked what it looked like, and I told her that it was like a tall shadow. She was really scared when I told her that. The next morning, she told me that she also saw a tall shadow like the one that I saw yesterday as well. She told me that about a week earlier, when I was at work, she was in the bedroom folding laundry. It was during the afternoon, so the apartment was not dark. She saw a shadow pass by the hallway from the living room toward the bathroom. She thought that I had come home early, so she called my name. Nobody answered. She went to check and saw nobody there. She didn't tell me because she knew that I would say that it was just probably the light from outside. And honestly, she was right. That was probably something that I would have said. The strange thing was that after we both admitted to seeing it, the apartment seemed to get more active. I know it sounds weird, like we gave it attention or something, but this is how it felt. Before it was small things, and after that, it felt like whatever was there did not care if we noticed it anymore. The next thing that happened was with my wife's bracelet. My wife had this silver bracelet that her mom gave her. It wasn't expensive, but it meant a lot to her. She usually took it off before showering and put it on a small dish on the bathroom counter. However, one morning, she couldn't find it at all. She asked me if I had moved it, and I said no. We searched everywhere. We checked the bathroom, under the sink, the bedroom floor, the couch, everything, but we couldn't find it. For 3 days, it was gone. Then, on the 4th day, I came home from work and saw my wife standing in the kitchen, staring at the stove. I asked her what was wrong, and she pointed at the front burner. The bracelet was sitting there. Not on the counter, not near the stove, on the burner. The burner was off, but the bracelet was placed in a perfect circle right in the middle of it. My wife looked like she was about to cry. She said that she had used the stove that morning to make eggs before work, and it wasn't there. I believed her because if a bracelet was sitting on the burner, anyone would notice it before turning the stove on. I picked it up and noticed immediately that it was cold. Not room temperature, but cold. My wife took it from me and put it in a drawer. She stopped wearing it after that. There was one night that I remember that I had a very weird dream. I dreamt that I was standing in the hallway outside of our apartment. The hallway lights were on, and I could hear someone crying behind one of the doors. I walked down the hallway, but every door number was missing. When I got to our door, it was open, and inside, I could hear my wife calling me from the bedroom. I walked in, but the apartment was empty. The closet mirror was open, and in the reflection, I saw someone standing behind me. Then I woke up. The night after that, I had almost the same dream, except this time the hallway smelled like smoke. Not house fire smoke, more like old cigarette smoke mixed with something wet. When I finally woke up, I could still smell it. I walked into the living room, and the smell was stronger near the front door. I thought that maybe someone was standing in the hallway smoking, so I peeped through the peephole and I checked. the hallway was empty. I remember one time I was taking a shower. My wife had already gone to bed, and the bathroom fan was on. The water was running, and everything had that kind of muffled sound. Then I heard my wife say my name. It sounded like she was standing right outside the bathroom door. I was still scrubbing shampoo in my hair, and my eyes were closed, so I answered her and asked what. I didn't get an answer, so I asked again. I asked, "What do you want?" And again, I didn't hear anything. This wasn't weird to me because my wife would do this to me a few times. She would ask me for something, and she just wouldn't reply. After I got out of the shower, I opened the bathroom door and looked into the hallway. The bedroom light was off, and my wife was in bed. I walked into the bedroom and turned on the lamp. I asked her if she had called me. She woke up a little bit and told me that she was asleep and that she didn't say anything to me. Now, I wasn't the only person that heard someone calling my name. This also happened to my wife. She was in the kitchen washing dishes while I was in the living room. I had my earbuds on, but I only had one ear. I saw her turn around quickly and look at me. She asked me if I called for her, and I said no. She said that she heard me say her name right by the hallway. I told her that I didn't say anything. She turned the sink off, and we both listened. Then, from the bedroom, we heard a soft thump. I slowly walked to the bedroom and turned on the light. One of our pillows was on the floor. That could have been nothing. Pillows fall, and maybe it was on the edge. However, the pillow that fell was not the one beside the bed. It was near the closet, about 5 feet away from where it should have been, like someone had tossed it. This one time, my wife and I were doing laundry in our apartment laundry room. The room was located on the first floor near the back entrance. It had 2 washers, 2 dryers, and a folding table, and it had a small window facing the parking lot. I usually did the laundry late because that was when the machines were open. One night, at around 9 or 10 p.m., I went down to switch some clothes from the washer to the dryer. When I got to the laundry room, I heard humming. It sounded like a woman humming softly. At first, I thought that someone was inside, so I stopped by the door and waited. The humming continued. It wasn't a song that I knew. It was just a few of the same sounds and notes over and over. I opened the door, expecting to see someone in there, but nobody was inside. Our washer was done and the room was warm from the dryers. The humming stopped right when I walked in. I told myself that maybe it was the machine, that the washer and dryers were a little old and it made some humming noises. I moved my clothes into the dryer and started it. As I was cleaning the lint trap, I heard the humming again. This time, it was right behind me. I turned around fast. Nobody. The only thing that stood behind me was the little window. The parking lot outside was dark, and I could see my own reflection in the glass. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing behind me in the reflection, but when I turned again, there was nothing. I left my laundry there and went back upstairs. I ended up asking my wife to go with me when the dryer was done. When we went back down, the laundry room was normal. My clothes were dry, nobody was there, but my wife said that the room smelled like perfume. I didn't notice it at first, but once she said it, I smelled it too. It was like normal perfume, the ones that, women typically wear. Now, since we've been at these apartments for a few years now, I've gotten to know some of the neighbors around our apartment. One time, I was getting mail in the lobby when I met one of our neighbors. We were having a normal conversation and small talk when I decided to ask her suddenly about the apartment. I asked her if she had ever heard weird noises in the building. She looked at me for a little bit and asked if I heard them at nighttime. I said, yeah. And she asked us which apartment we were in, so I told her. She just nodded like that explained something, and then I asked her what she meant. She said that the hallway on our side had always been weird. She didn't say it was haunted or that there were any ghosts, but just that it was weird. She told me that people would often move in and out of that side more than the other side, and that some tenants complained about knocking and footsteps and stuff like that. She also said that the laundry room had sounds as well, but management always said that it was the pipes. And then I asked her quietly if anyone had died in this apartment. She kind of just looked at me and said that it was a possibility, but that she didn't know. Then she took her mail too and then left. Another experience I want to share with you was something that happened to me at night. It was during the middle of winter, and anyone from Minnesota in the upper Midwest knows how cold it gets. There is no reason to open a balcony door at night in winter unless you're trying to freeze yourself. That night, my wife and I went to bed at around 10:30. I remember checking the balcony doors before bed. The stick was on the track to keep it from opening, and the lock was on. The curtain was closed. Sometime after around midnight, I woke up because the apartment was freezing. My wife and I noticed how cold we were getting. At first, I thought that maybe our bedroom window was cracked open. I got up and checked, but sure enough, it was closed. Then I got up and turned on all the lights and walked out to the hallway. This is when I saw that the balcony door was open, about 6 inches. The curtain was moving from the wind. Snow was blowing through the crack. I stood there confused because the stick that we kept in the track was not in the track anymore. It was on the floor, pushed against the wall. I closed the door, locked it, and put the stick back, and stood there for a while. My wife came out and asked about what happened. I told her that the balcony door was open. She looked at it and then looked at the stick. She asked if I had forgotten to put it back earlier or if I had opened the door. I told her that no, I certainly left it locked and closed. The next morning, we tried to see if the wind or the door could open by itself, but obviously it could not. You had to lift the handle and then slide it and then move the stick out of the track before you did all that. It wasn't something that could happen from the wind or normal vibration. After that, things got quiet again. But then I had one of the worst sleep paralysis experiences I have ever had. It happened, I think, about a few months ago. I remember because my wife and I had just argued that night. It wasn't even a big argument. It was just one of those petty husband and wife arguments about bills and work and being tired. I went to bed without really talking. I was facing the closet and my wife was facing the wall. I woke up in the middle of the night. The room was dark, but I could just barely see the closet mirror, and I noticed that the side of the closet was open again. I tried to move at this point, but I couldn't, and right away, I knew what was happening. I told myself to breathe and to not panic, and then I started to pray in my head, but my thoughts just felt slow. Then I saw some movement in the mirror. At first, I thought it was my wife moving behind me, but in the reflection, I saw a dark figure standing at the foot of our bed. It was tall, thin, human-shaped. It had no face, no clothes, and it was just like a shadow. It stood there facing us. I tried to wake up my wife, but I could not move my hand. I tried to make a sound, but nothing came out. The figure started moving closer. but not like walking. It was like getting closer every time I blinked. 1 second it was at the foot of the bed, and then it was near my wife's side, and then it was bending over her. I could see it in the mirror. My wife was sleeping, but then she started breathing weirdly, like she was trying to breathe through pressure. Her hand moved a little, like she was trying to push something off. I got angry at that point. I was more angry than scared. I remember thinking that whatever this thing was, for it to not touch her and for it to leave her alone. But I still couldn't move. However, in my head, I started saying every prayer that I could remember. I said anything that came to mind. Then the figure turned its head towards me. Even though it did not have a face, I knew it was looking at me. The pressure on my chest became so heavy that I thought I was going to pass out. My ears started ringing, and the ringing got louder and louder until I could not hear anything else. Then, from somewhere in the apartment, something fell. It was loud. The pressure broke. I sat up gasping, and my wife sat up at the same time crying. She told me that something was holding her mouth. I turned on all the lights and she was shaking. I asked her what she saw, but she said that she didn't see it clearly, but she felt like someone was standing next to her on the side of the bed, leaning over her. She said that she tried calling my name, but her mouth would not open. We turned on all the lights in our apartment and went into the living room to see what had fallen. The picture frame from our wall was on the floor. It was a picture of us from when we first got married. We were wearing our Hmong clothes. The nail was still in the wall. The hook on the back of the frame was not broken. The frame was not broken either. It was just lying face down on the carpet. I picked it up and the glass was shattered. My wife told me to leave it on a table while she went to go get a broom to clean up the glass. That night, we did not go back to sleep. We sat in our room with the lights on until morning. Ever since then, things have not stopped completely, but some things have slowed down. I don't know if it's because we stopped reacting to whatever it was, or because whatever it was only comes around once in a while, and sometimes we still hear stuff move around in our apartment. But for now, there really isn't much. We've told my wife's parents a few times, and they have come to sweep our apartment. We've also gotten strings tied and all those things, but nothing has seemed to change. My wife told me that we might have to move out one of these days, but right now, everything in this area is very expensive, and I'm not sure if we can afford it. I'll make sure to keep you updated if anything changes. Wow. I can't believe after all these experiences, they haven't moved out. But then again, everything is just so expensive, and I don't even know how much rent costs up in the Minnesota Maplewood area, but I'm assuming it's also pretty expensive. So I can see why they just decided to struggle all these years. But I felt the most connection. I felt like I could relate when he explained his sleep paralysis, because for me, it's like very similar. And not only that, but the only biggest difference for me is that I often hear a ringing sound when I'm about to get sat on. Or these days, I actually can tell before I'm about to get sat on. Like there's just this feeling, this sense that I get that I'm like, oh, it's gonna happen. And if I'm too lazy and I don't get up on time, then it sits on me. But if I the moment I hear it, and if I get up right away or I move or I change my position, then it'll leave me alone. But yeah, there's been a few weird instances. Like there's one time where I remember I got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. It was around 3 o'clock. This always happens to me at around 3 in the morning, okay? I got up, took a leak, went back to bed, and I was awake by now because I'm a very light sleeper and it takes a lot for me to go to sleep. So I'm pretty much wide awake now, and I'm just laying in bed, and I'm laying on my back and my legs are a little bit set far apart, and I could feel something, this pressure, sit at the end of the bed. I felt it like drop down a little bit, and then it dropped down a little bit again. And then it dropped down for the third time, and I felt this pressure at the foot of the bed. And that's when I started kicking, and I got up and I started cussing at whatever the hell it was to get out, and to leave me alone. And that if it was long, it would be cut into 3, and if it was short, it'd be cut into 2, And then my wife got up. She was like, "Oh, what's going on?" I said, "Oh, it's nothing." And then she went back to bed. And yeah, that was my sleep paralysis experience. But let me know what you guys think about this story in the comment section below. And before you click off, make sure you check out this video on screen. YouTube's telling me that this is the best recommended video for you. And if you haven't already, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. I really want to be able to afford all of my adult beverages. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.